This coverage of the British Historic Rally Championship is brought to you by West Wales Rally Spares, XS Racing, Autosessif.com, the Tuthill Post Challenge, Sherwood Engines and Skipton Ford. Hello and welcome to Sweetlam for round one of the Dunlop Wanna Go MSA British Historic Rally Championship, the Rally Marketing Mid Wales Stages. And something special it was, and not only for the drivers either, as the watching spectators were treated to an exhibition of superb high-speed rallying right from the start, with Nick Elliott simply hurling his escort around Haffron and Sweetlam. Nick was joined on this event for the first time by co-driver Chris Brooks, but the new combination clearly worked well as they were fastest on two of the first three stages to lead by 7 seconds at the lunchtime halt. But after having missed most of the 2010 season, Julian Reynolds and Ian Oakey were making a welcome return to the championship and were not about to let Elliott have things on his own way as he had on the 2010 event. And they were really on it right from the start.
Into 5 left, brake, into 6 right, don't cut. 5 left, opens, long.
Reynolds and Oakey were just a little bit slower on stage one than Elliott and Brooks, but it didn't look that way. And then he started to go a bit quicker.
Very tight 3 left, into 4 right, opens and tightens. And 4 left, 60. 1 left, and 2 right, into brake, cut 4 left. Into
and after that breathtaking display, we caught up with the 2 front runners.
It's a weird feeling. You don't know if you can drive a rally car, and then you do a stage and you think, oh yeah, I can again. It's a really weird feeling, but I think that's the nerves and part of it all. You know, on the way to the first stage, you wonder why you're doing it and everything, don't you? And you get through the first one, you're happy enough then.
It's very close. Julian obviously is, extremely talented and pushing us hard. Going to be an interesting afternoon, and it could go either way. It'd be better if we could go home now, really.
Running a fine third in Category 3 and overall, behind Reynolds and Elliott, were Paul Griffiths and Paul Williams in their Mark II escort, making a welcome addition to the BHRC series. That they were third quickest on each of the first 3 stages was a good performance in itself, but Griffiths probably didn't expect to be 46 seconds down on Elliott so early in the event.
The guys in front, they must be on a wing and a prayer sometimes. Either that or they're just far quicker than I am. I have to think about the next rally, because if anything goes wrong here, if it's in a ball, there's no next rally.
Behind Griffiths were Will Onions and Dave Williams. Twice winners in 2010, this crew had retired at the end of the first stage here on the previous event, so were understandably a bit cautious at the start. But such was the pace of the leading 2, that Onions was 78 seconds down on Elliott after 3 stages. Not running at lunch, sadly, were Rob Smith and Sean O'Gorman. The 2010 Category 3 champions got to the end of the first stage in a satisfactory 4th place, but then weren't seen again, which was not satisfactory at all. And so it was Tim Pearcey and Neil Shanks who were in a fight for the lower top 6 positions, just trailing Onions and Williams at this point in the rally. And just behind Pearcey and Shanks were Alan Walker and Jess Rogers. This early top 6 position belying their seeding of 18th on the road, and they look quick, spectacular and untroubled at this pace. Moving to Category 2 now, and it was the category and championship winners in 2010, David Stokes and Guy Weaver, who led the cars onto the stages and set the pace right from the start, being 15 seconds quicker than their nearest rival on the first stage. And that rival was Rupert Lomax, the younger driver caught out by the older man's pace. And so it was Stokes who had the morning's glory. And straight into third came Chris Brown and Liz Jordan, continuing their great improvement in form and pace that had seen them finish 2010 on such a high. And it may have surprised some to see them ahead of the 2010 Track Rod Category 2 victors, and of course the outright winners of the 2010 Roger Albert Clark Rally, Stefan Stoop and Joris Irad. But the Belgian crew were making their debut on these stages and had a lot to learn. But Stokes and Weaver haven't got anything to learn, continue to set the pace. And after 3 fastest stage times on the trot, we spoke to Stokes at service.
Very, very slippery where it's all churned up and, you know, all the rest of it, where all the other cars been through. But it's totally different to the first time, you know. The car is not so predictable. We had a few more, you know, where are we going?
Lomax hadn't given up hope though, and after dropping 15 seconds on the first stage, he and co-driver David Alcock upped their pace to drop just 4 seconds on stage 2 and 1 second on stage 3. The question was, could they then go faster than Stokes and Weaver on stage 4? Although Brown and Jordan couldn't match that pace, the duo had to be pleased with their continuing improvement, which has made them into consistent top 3 Category 2 contenders. And as for Stoof and Arad, the RAC and Bickles de Spa winners were perhaps shocked by the pace of the 3 British crews ahead of them, but were well aware of the fact that they were new to this event and to these forests. With Desi Nutt in the Porsche 911 was Geraldine McBride, guiding Desi to a time an astonishing 28 seconds quicker than anybody else here. With Graham Waite in his cumbersome Volvo Amazon was Jill Cotton, the duo being slightly shell-shocked by Desi's time, it has to be said. After a steady start with 4th fastest on stage 1 and 5th fastest on stage 2, Simon Wallace just appeared from nowhere to set the fastest time on stage 3, taking the stage victory from Nutt by just 3 seconds. But he was 48 seconds behind Nutt, and surely that would be too much to make up over the final 2 stages. And so it appeared that all Nutt and McBride had to do was keep going, and they had this rally in the bag.
130 over crest.
But of course rallying is not as simple as that, is it? And one slight lapse of concentration from Desi was all that was needed to put them out of the rally. And with the steering broken, the crew were out. This could have allowed Waite and Cotton into the lead, but with his Volvo breathing as heavily as an 80-year-old on 50 fags a day, and the car trailing a plume of smoke behind it, it was obvious that some form of discretion was called for, which allowed Simon Wallace and Graham Wright to take another 2 fastest times and sweep into the lead, ultimately taking a victory that must have come as much of a surprise to them as it did to everyone else. With Waite and Cotton in second, it was Ricky Prophet and John Stanger-Lees who took third and Class B5, with Prophet trying hard right until the end. And any rally which sees you take top 4 places on every stage has got to be okay, really, hasn't it? And Super Flamboyancy saw Dave Reynolds and Cliff Doe take second quickest on Maherin and 4th overall at the end of the event. In Category 2, if you remember, Rupert Lomax had been closing on David Stokes, and the question was, could Lomax beat Stokes on Pikes Peak? Well, certainly if Stokes had his way, he wouldn't. But he didn't have things his way, and Lomax beat him by 3 seconds. So you can bet that Stokes was now super concentrated as he tackled Maherin. But Lomax wasn't going to give up trying either, and gave it his all through his ultra-fast stage. He just couldn't match or catch Stokes though, losing another 10 seconds to the reigning BHRC champions, leaving Stokes and Weaver to take a relatively comfortable 27 seconds victory. Trailing in the wake of this battle, Chris Brown and Liz Jordan were involved in their own great scrap with Stefan Stoof and Joris Irad. Brown was quicker than Stoof on stages 1, 2 and 3, but with a smaller gap each time, before Stoof took 7 seconds from Brown on Pikes Peak. If he repeated that on Maherin, then 3rd place would be his. But he couldn't, taking only 1 more second from Brown and Jordan, and so after a great drive by Brown, he beat the hot crew of the moment by just 3 seconds to take a well-deserved 3rd overall in Category 2. Behind that battle, it was Tim Jones and Don James who managed 5th overall and a half-minute victory in Class C3, with Dick Slaughter taking 6th and 2nd in C3. But congratulations as ever go to David Stokes and Guy Weaver, who are now unbeaten in Category 2 on BHLC events since the Manx Rally in July 2010. Which just leaves the overall battle and at the same time the Category 3 results to look at. And with only 7 seconds over Julian Reynolds and Ian Oakey as they started Pikes Peak, it was obvious that Nick Elliott was going to have to drive just as fast as he could. But Reynolds was driving just that little bit faster. But even after that stunning display, he only took 3 seconds off Elliott, so it would be anybody's rally as they headed into Meherrin. Except for Paul Griffiths and Paul Williams, sadly, as they slid wide on the main downhill section on Pikes Peak, and as we can see from the onboarding David Stokes car, although undamaged, they were stuck and out of the rally.
80.
So this allowed Will Onions and Dave Williams to move into 3rd, when 4th looked like the best that they could hope for on this particular day. And mustn't grumble, that's a far better result than they had on this event in 2010. Although Tim Pearcey should have been next along, he and Neil Shanks had a bit of a scare on the last stage.
Well, we've had, unfortunately, we had complete brake failure on the last stage about 4 miles in. Luckily, we managed to get the car stopped for a quite a tight corner, but we've had to spend about half an hour lying on my back fixing it on the road.
Benefiting just a tiny bit from the misfortune of others, but after a brilliant performance nonetheless, Alan Walker and Jez Rogers brought their escort home in a superb and well-deserved 4th place, topping it off with 4th and 3rd fastest times on Pikes Peak and Meherrin. So they went home a really happy crew. And after their best performance for some time, Nick Woodman and Simon Mills brought their escort home in 6 of the registered runners, behind Simon Tyso and Cliff Simmons, and Guy Woodcock and Hugh Kent unregistered cars. But back to the battle at the front now, and with only 4 seconds separating Elliott from Reynolds, the stage was set for a fantastic finish, with both drivers giving it absolutely everything. And just how quickly can you drive a Ford Escort? And then over the last few miles, and Reynolds got even quicker.
And right over crest, 40, and 2 right over crest, and 2 left, and 2 tight 2 right, and 2 left, 3 right, 150. And long 1 left, opens and tightens, brake 60, down to 5 right, opens. And 2 left, 3 right, don't cut, 50, 1 left, long, 60, down to 2 left, and 2 right, long, 80, to tight 3 right, into crest.
And at the end, victory belonged to Julian Reynolds and Ian Oakey by the astonishingly small margin of 1 second.
It's easy being the one chasing, you know, when you're in front, you don't want to push too hard and make any mistakes. So it was easier for us to push hard and try and catch him. So
yeah, you knew what you had to do.
Yeah.
So overall, good feeling?
Very good, yeah, very happy.
This coverage of the Dunlop Wanna Go MSA British Historic Rally Championship is brought to you by our TV partners.